Yeah, it was kind of funny because I think Ganesham has showed dal, which is like a soup. So I kind of just, there's a certain way that you make the spices to roast them with oil. It's called like a chance. So I was just kind of like roasting the spices to put into the dal. And then a friend of mine said, well, you could put the tomatoes in the chance and then like, you know, let it sit for a while and then put it into the soup. And I was like, hey, that's like a chutney. So that's kind of how I figured out how to make a chutney. It's not like I looked it up in a cookbook or anything like that. But I've been having chutney my whole life, and I was like, this is really good. This is tomato chutney. So it's really simple. And what's really cool is that you can use this for all kinds of like vegetables and fruits and experiment. You can have a lot of fun with it. You can use it, I've used this principle like totally concoction. I made it as a base for like a vegetable stir fry. Like you could add vegetables to it. You could put it in a soup. You can do so many things with it. Or you can cook it really dense and just have it as a chutney to, you know, dip whatever in. So what I'll be demonstrating to you today is tomato chutney. And it's the simplest and the most like universal form. So if you like, you can all gather around. You can come up and see the wok, and then you can see. Okay. So how many of you are familiar with making a chance? Like, anybody know what that is? So what in Indian cooking, often you'll take oil and you put it in a pan, and then you take seed spices and then you put them in the hot oil, and then it roasts the spices and brings out all the flavors. So if you're like an Indian restaurant and you really feel like spices are very strong, then that's where it comes from. It's called a chance. Is there another name for it?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right.
It's like the base of the flavor, and before you put any vegetables or anything else, you just get the flavor.
The spices from all the spices. It makes it distinct. So you wait till the wok is like somewhat hot. What I like to do is I like to open all my containers or just have a nice way to easily access, because it goes very fast. That's why you have to like pay close attention. If you're going to make a chance and you have seed spices, often you can have ground spices. This is cumin. You see this long seeds. This is mustard seed. This is hing. It has, in Bakthi we don't really use onions or garlic, so this is kind of a substitute. It's called hing. Asvatita. Asvatita, hing, H-I-N-G. So hing, you could put salt if you want, red pepper flakes, ginger, okay? So I open up everything. This is getting hot.
Yes.
So it's going to be ready. So I pour in the oil. Always when you roast spices for a chance, you always do the seeds first. And there's actually a good order to this so you don't burn them. It's nothing worse than like burning a chance. So do you think this is too hot as it is? Yeah, it shouldn't be too hot. You don't want to burn your spice. If you see the oil, how it's very like active almost immediately. So you always do the mustard seeds first. You do mustard seeds, and you pour them in. If you look, you can see they're kind of popping. It's very quick. And now I'm going to put in the cumin, then the ginger, then the powdered spices always come last. And then before anything burns, I'm just going to quickly put in the tomatoes. Now, you just you stir it. And the longer, my friend was telling me, the longer you let this roast, the better. And usually if this is hot. Then you add the sugar. It just depends how much you want to add. It should come to like a rolling boil. And then you can also add, I did this the other day at the temple where I put these red pepper flakes, and I totally underestimated how hot they came, how powerful. So it was like shockingly spicy. So just be careful with using this. But chutneys, I think, are supposed to be spicy. So it wasn't like a turn-off. It was like some people really liked it. So it depends. But if you put this in, just be aware, the longer it's cooking, the more spicy it is. Yeah. So Ganesham, some of this is new. I'm like, oh, cinnamon. We'll put the cinnamon in there. So I'm just kind of putting the sugar. You just, I'm like, see how I'm guesstimating everything? I'm just kind of like, well, that looks like a good amount for this kind of, if you can see, you know, like sometimes you don't want something to be too seedy, but like, you know, if you'll see that the seeds are in here, and it's kind of, it's a little watery, and if you give it, the more time you cook it, it'll kind of condense down further and further, and it'll get really like richer as you cook it. But it depends on what kind. It could be more like a jam, that it gets that thick. You can do this with apples, plums, mango chutney, apple chutney, plum chutney, pineapple chutney. You can experiment with all kinds of things. And so it'll all kind of, it'll start looking like this, and as time goes on, it'll condense down further. And if the sugar's in there as well, it'll... If you wanted to, you could add vegetables to it, according to how the length of time that they cook. Or like steamed vegetables already, and you just throw them in there. Or you could have a soup, and you just take this, and you throw it in the soup. Or you could have, yeah, you could have so many things with this. Are there any questions?